Every spring, the same thing happens in kitchens and garages across America and Europe. Seed trays get filled, labels get written, seeds get tucked into soil with care, water goes on. The tray sits under a light or on a windowsill. And then the waiting begins. Day 1, nothing. Day 3, nothing. Day 5, maybe a crack in the surface, maybe a tiny green thread pushing through. Hope builds. Day 7, 6 seedlings standing in a row, fragile but alive. And then morning 8 arrives, and half of them are flat, collapsed at the base, stems pinched, gone overnight like something reached up from the soil and pulled them under. The ones that survived look fine for now. But they are growing slowly, pale, thin, struggling in a way that does not match the effort that went into planting them. By week 3, you are staring at a tray of disappointment, wondering what you did wrong. Too much water, not enough light, bad soil, bad seeds, bad luck. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone, and you are not the problem. Seed failure at the germination and seedling stage is the most common reason home gardeners lose an entire season before it starts. Not frost, not pests, not drought. The quiet disaster that happens in the first 2 weeks. Seeds that never wake up, seeds that wake up and immediately die, seedlings that stall and never recover. Costs more gardens, more production than any other single issue. And most people never figure out the real cause. There are 3 things happening underground that determine whether a seed thrives or fails. 3 biological challenges that every seed faces the moment it contacts wet soil. And for most home gardeners, all 3 of those challenges go completely unaddressed. The seed gets dropped into the ground with nothing but hope and moisture. And hope is not a germination strategy. The first challenge is dormancy. Every seed carries a built-in lock, a hormone called abscisic acid that keeps the embryo in suspended animation. Until that lock is broken, the seed will not germinate no matter how perfect the conditions are. This is why you can plant a whole row of seeds in good soil at the right temperature, with the right moisture, and still have half of them sitting there, doing nothing 3 weeks later. They are not dead. They are asleep. And nothing you are doing from the outside is reaching the internal chemistry that keeps them locked. The second challenge is roots. Even when a seed does germinate, the first root, the radicle, is tiny, fragile, and slow. In cold spring soil, root development can stall for days. The seedling is alive, but barely anchored, barely absorbing water, barely able to support the stem and leaves trying to grow above. A seedling with a weak early root system is a seedling running on empty. It may survive. It will not thrive. The third challenge is disease. The soil is not the safe, nurturing cradle most people imagine. It is full of fungal spores, bacterial colonies, and pathogens that have been sitting dormant all winter, waiting for exactly this moment. A soft, vulnerable, freshly germinated seed with no immune defenses yet established. Damping off, caused primarily by Pythium, Rhizoctonia, and Fusarium fungi, can kill a healthy-looking seedling in hours. The stem collapses at the soil line. The seedling falls. And the gardener blames overwatering or bad luck when the real cause was a pathogen that attacked before the plant had any ability to defend itself. 3 challenges: dormancy, weak roots, disease. Address none of them, and you are gambling. Address all 3 before the seed even touches the soil. And the odds shift dramatically in your favor. There is a way to do that. 1 overnight soak. 3 ingredients. And every single one of them is either growing wild within a few miles of your house or already sitting in your medicine cabinet. Total cost: almost nothing. Total preparation time: 10 minutes of work and 2 days of waiting. No synthetic chemicals, no laboratory products, no specialty garden store purchases. But, and this is important, the method only works if the preparation is done correctly. The wrong type of one ingredient ruins the solution. Too much of another kills the seeds outright. And the most common preparation mistake, one that sounds perfectly logical but destroys the key active compound, turns the most powerful ingredient into useless brown water. I'm going to walk through all 3 ingredients: the science behind each one, the exact preparation method, and the specific mistakes that separate gardeners who get remarkable results from gardeners who get nothing. And I want to start with the ingredient that has the most extraordinary story behind it. Because it comes from a tree that has been giving away for free the exact same compound that commercial nurseries package in tiny bottles and sell for $8 to $15. Every river, every pond, every wet ditch in the temperate world has this tree growing along its banks. You have walked past it 1,000 times. And inside every young green branch, in a thin layer just beneath the bark, is one of the most powerful natural rooting hormones ever identified by science. The weeping willow. Snap a branch off any other tree and drop it in water. It rots. Oak, maple, pine, dead in days. But snap a young green branch off a willow, drop it in muddy water, and something happens that defies what most people expect from a broken twig. Within a week, white roots push out of the broken end. No rooting powder, no fertilizer, no human intervention. The branch lands in wet ground and starts becoming a new tree. This is not resilience in the poetic sense. This is biochemistry. The willow produces massive concentrations of a hormone called indole 3-butyric acid, IBA, the exact molecule that laboratories synthesize and sell as commercial rooting hormone. The tree makes it naturally, constantly, in every young branch. And when that branch breaks, the IBA at the wound site triggers rapid root cell division. The tree carries its own regeneration kit inside its bark. Gardeners have known this for centuries. Long before anyone identified IBA as a molecule, traditional horticulturalists were soaking crushed willow branches in water and using the extract, willow water, to root cuttings faster and more reliably. It is one of the oldest recorded propagation techniques in history, and the method for making it has not changed because it does not need to. Collect 10 to 15 young green or yellow willow branches in early spring when the buds are just beginning to swell. Cut them into 1-inch pieces. Crush each piece lightly with the back of a knife, just enough to crack the bark and expose the cambium layer beneath. Place the crushed pieces in a glass jar or clean bucket. Add water at roughly 4 parts water to 1 part willow material. Room temperature only. This is the critical detail most guides get dangerously wrong. Do not use hot or boiling water. A breaks down rapidly at high temperatures. Boiling willow branches does not make stronger extract. It makes dead water. Patience is the extraction method. Heat is the destruction method. Let the mixture steep for 48 to 72 hours. The water turns a warm golden brown. That color is your confirmation that the auxins have leached into the solution. Strain out the twigs. What remains is willow water, a natural rooting concentrate you made for free from a tree that grows wild across most of the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Europe. Now, willow water is primarily researched as a rooting aid for cuttings, stem pieces from existing plants that you want to root into new plants. That is where the formal evidence is strongest. For seed soaking, the research is thinner, but the logic is sound. When a seed germinates and pushes out its first root, that radical is forming new root tissue in contact with moisture. The same process a cutting undergoes. The auxins in willow water support root cell division and elongation. They do not force germination. That is a different mechanism. But they give the emerging root a hormonal environment that encourages faster, more vigorous development once the seed cracks open. Gardeners who include willow water in their seed soak consistently report stronger early root systems compared to plain water alone. That handles the root challenge. But the seed is still asleep. And even if it wakes up and roots well, the disease threat in the soil has not been addressed. Which is why there are 2 more ingredients. And the next one has a connection to the willow tree that is so elegant it almost feels like nature planned it. The same tree that gives you free rooting hormone also inspired the most widely used medicine in human history. That is not a coincidence. That is the same chemistry, doing the same kind of work, in 2 completely different kingdoms of life. Thousands of years before the Bayer Company manufactured the first aspirin tablet in 1897, ancient civilizations already knew that willow bark relieved pain and reduced fever. The Sumerians recorded it on clay tablets. Hippocrates prescribed it in ancient Greece. Indigenous peoples across North America brewed willow bark tea as medicine for generations. What none of them knew, what science would not discover until much later, was that willow bark contains a compound called salicin. The human body converts salicin into salicylic acid, the molecule that reduces inflammation and pain. Chemists eventually refined this into acetyl salicylic acid, the active ingredient in every aspirin tablet on every pharmacy shelf in the world. So the willow gives us IBA for roots and salicin for medicine, the same tree, the same bark, two compounds that both protect and promote life. And here is where it gets genuinely remarkable for gardeners. Because salicylic acid does not just work in the human body, it works in plants. And what it does inside a plant is arguably even more impressive than what it does inside a person. When aspirin dissolves in water and that water reaches plant tissue, whether through a seed soak, a root drench, or a foliar spray, the acetyl salicylic acid breaks down into salicylic acid. And salicylic acid triggers something called systemic acquired resistance, or SAR. Think of it as a vaccination, not against a human disease, but against plant disease. The salicylic acid enters the plant's cells and switches on defense genes. The entire plant goes on alert. It begins producing protective proteins called pathogenesis-related proteins. Cell walls thicken. Chemical defense pathways activate. The immune system revs up to full capacity before any pathogen has actually arrived. This is not fringe science. Systemic acquired resistance is one of the most studied mechanisms in modern plant pathology. Research on wheat, tomatoes, barley, and dozens of other crops has demonstrated that salicylic acid priming produces plants with measurably better disease resistance, stronger stems, and improved yields compared to untreated controls. The effect is particularly relevant for seedlings, because the first 2 weeks after germination are when plants are most vulnerable to soil-borne pathogens and least equipped to defend themselves. A seed that enters the soil with its SAR pathway already activated has a genuine head start against the fungi waiting in that soil. This is why aspirin matters for seed starting, not as a fertilizer, not as a growth stimulant, as an immune primer. It gives the seedling a defense system that would normally take weeks to develop on its own, compressed into the 12 to 24 hours of an overnight soak. The dose is everything, and this is where most people go wrong. One standard uncoated aspirin tablet, 325 milligrams, dissolved in 1 gallon of water. That is the effective concentration. 1 tablet, 1 gallon, no more. The word uncoated matters. Enteric-coated aspirin, the kind with a smooth, waxy shell designed to survive stomach acid, will not dissolve properly in room temperature water. Gel caps will not work either. You need plain, cheap, generic, uncoated aspirin, the kind that costs $2 for a bottle of 100 tablets at any pharmacy or grocery store. Drop 1 tablet into your gallon of willow water and stir gently until it dissolves completely. That takes a few minutes. Be patient. The temptation is always to use more. 2 tablets. 3. If one is good, more must be better. It is not. Salicylic acid at higher concentrations shifts from defense activator to cellular stressor. It can inhibit germination instead of supporting it. It can damage the delicate embryonic tissue inside the seed. The effective window is narrow but well-defined. 1 standard tablet per gallon is the sweet spot that research and practical experience converge on. Stay there. One more thing about aspirin and seeds that is worth understanding, because it explains something most gardeners have observed without knowing the cause. Salicylic acid creates a mild simulated stress in the plant, just enough to trigger the defense response without causing actual damage. This is a well-documented phenomenon in plant biology called hormesis. A small, controlled stress makes the organism stronger. A seed that has been gently primed by salicylic acid builds defenses it would not have built in the absence of that signal. It comes out of the soak prepared for a hostile environment. A seed that faces no challenge at all during germination stays undefended and vulnerable. Think of it this way. The aspirin does not make the seed stronger by giving it something extra. It makes the seed stronger by convincing it that the world outside is dangerous, which, in soil full of Pythium and Fusarium spores, it absolutely is. The seed arms itself accordingly, and by the time its root actually encounters those pathogens, the defense system is already running. That addresses two of the three challenges. The willow water supports root development. The aspirin primes the immune system. But there is still the first problem, the one that stops everything else from mattering. The seed is asleep, and no amount of rooting hormone or immune priming helps a seed that never wakes up. This is the problem most gardeners do not even know exists. They assume that a seed in wet soil at the right temperature will germinate automatically. Many do, but many do not. Every experienced grower has planted a row of seeds in apparently perfect conditions and watched half of them sit there for weeks doing nothing while the other half sprouted on schedule. The non-germinators are not dead. They are dormant, locked in biochemical sleep by a hormone called abscisic acid, ABA, that prevents the embryo from activating until specific internal conditions are met. Abscisic acid is the seed's safety lock. In nature, it prevents germination during unfavorable conditions, keeping seeds dormant through winter, through drought, through any period where sprouting would be fatal. The lock breaks naturally when the seed experiences the right combination of moisture, temperature, and time. Cold stratification over winter does it for many species. Weeks of consistent moisture does it for others. But in a garden context, where you need germination on your schedule, not nature's, that internal lock is the invisible barrier between a planted seed and a growing plant. The third ingredient breaks that lock, and it is the brown bottle sitting next to the aspirin in your medicine cabinet. Hydrogen peroxide, 3%, the standard solution sold at every pharmacy and grocery store for $1 or $2. Most people think of hydrogen peroxide as a wound disinfectant, something for scrubbed knees. But in plant physiology, hydrogen peroxide is a critical signaling molecule. When a diluted H2O2 solution contacts a dormant seed, it does something specific and powerful. It sends an oxidative signal that breaks down abscisic acid and triggers the production of gibberellic acid, the hormone of germination. In plain terms, hydrogen peroxide flips the switch from sleep to grow. But it does more than just flip the switch. Once the germination signal fires, hydrogen peroxide activates metabolic enzymes, particularly alpha amylase, that break down the seed's stored starches into usable sugars. This gives the embryo an immediate burst of energy. The radicle, the first root, pushes out faster and stronger than it would without that enzymatic boost. Research on this mechanism is solid. Controlled studies across multiple crop species, peas, wheat, barley, peppers, have demonstrated that seeds treated with dilute hydrogen peroxide solutions show faster germination, higher germination rates, and more vigorous early seedling growth compared to seeds soaked in plain water. The effect is most dramatic on older seeds with declining viability, hard-coated seeds that resist water uptake, and seeds planted in cool soil where germination would otherwise be slow. The dose is critical, 1 to 2 tablespoons of standard 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon of water. That is the safe, effective range. Do not exceed it. Do not use higher concentration products. The 35% food-grade hydrogen peroxide sold in some health stores is dangerously strong at this application and will kill seeds on contact. The 3% solution from the pharmacy is exactly what you need. Nothing stronger, nothing fancier. 2 tablespoons per gallon stirred into your aspirin-infused willow water, and the solution is complete. 3 ingredients, 3 challenges addressed. Willow water for roots, aspirin for immunity, hydrogen peroxide for the spark of germination, each one doing a job the others cannot, each one available in your yard or your medicine cabinet, and each one backed by real plant science. Not internet mythology, not gardening folklore, but documented biochemistry that explains exactly why it works. Now let me walk you through the exact protocol, the step-by-step preparation, the soaking method, the timing, and the specific mistakes that turn a powerful seed treatment into a waste of time or worse. Here is the exact method. Every measurement, every timing detail, every material choice matters. Follow it precisely, and you get a seed treatment that addresses germination, root development, and disease resistance in one overnight soak. Deviate on the wrong detail, and you get dead seeds or wasted effort. Step 1. Prepare the willow water base. This should be done 2 to 3 days before you plan to soak your seeds. Collect 10 to 15 young green or yellow willow branches. First-year growth, not old woody stems. The newer the growth, the higher the IBA concentration. Cut them into 1-inch pieces. Crush each piece lightly with the back of a knife or a mallet. You want the bark cracked open, not shredded. The goal is to expose the cambium layer, the thin green tissue just beneath the outer bark, where the highest concentration of auxins sits. Place the crushed pieces in a clean glass jar or food-grade plastic bucket. Add water at a ratio of 4 parts water to 1 part willow material. Use room temperature water. Rainwater is ideal, but dechlorinated tap water works fine. If you are using tap water, fill the container and let it sit uncovered for 24 hours before adding the willow pieces. This allows the chlorine to dissipate. Chlorine can interfere with the extraction. Cover the container loosely and let it steep at room temperature for 48 to 72 hours. Do not refrigerate. Do not heat. Do not stir. Just let it sit. After 2 to 3 days, the water will have turned a warm golden brown. Strain out the willow pieces through a fine mesh strainer or cheesecloth. The liquid that remains is your willow water base. One important note on shelf life that most guides forget to mention. Fresh willow water is most potent within 2 weeks of preparation. After that, the IBA begins to degrade. If you make more than you need, freeze the excess in ice cube trays or sealed containers. Frozen willow water retains its potency for several months. Thaw at room temperature before use. Do not microwave. Step 2. Add the aspirin. Measure 1 gallon of your freshly strained willow water. Drop in 1 standard 325 milligram uncoated aspirin tablet. Stir gently until it dissolves completely. This takes 2 to 5 minutes at room temperature. Make sure it is fully dissolved. Undissolved aspirin fragments sitting at the bottom of the container mean uneven distribution and inconsistent results. I will say it one more time, because this detail single-handedly determines whether the aspirin works or does nothing. The tablet must be uncoated, plain white generic aspirin, not enteric-coated, not gel-capped, not buffered, not extra strength. The waxy coating on enteric aspirin is specifically designed to resist dissolving in liquid, which is exactly what you do not want. It will sit in your willow water like a pebble, barely releasing anything. Plain, uncoated, 325 milligram tablets. They cost about 2 cents each. That is all you need. Step 3. Add the hydrogen peroxide. Pour 1 to 2 tablespoons of standard 3% hydrogen peroxide into the gallon of aspirin-infused willow water. Stir gently. That is it. The solution is complete. Do not use more than 2 tablespoons per gallon. Do not use higher concentration hydrogen peroxide. The 35% food-grade product that some health stores sell is not appropriate for this application at this dilution ratio. At 35% concentration, even a tablespoon per gallon delivers an oxidative dose strong enough to damage embryonic tissue inside the seed. The 3% solution from the pharmacy is formulated at exactly the right strength for this purpose. Stronger is not better. Stronger is destructive. Step 4. Soak the seeds. Place your seeds into the finished solution. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, cucumbers, herbs, flowers. All respond well. Push the seeds below the surface. If they float, stir gently or place a small piece of cheesecloth over them to keep them submerged. Soak for 12 to 24 hours. Overnight is the simplest approach. Prepare the solution in the evening, drop the seeds in, and plant the next morning. Do not soak longer than 24 hours. Extended soaking in any liquid, even plain water, can drown seeds by cutting off oxygen to the embryo. 12 to 24 hours is the effective window. Set a reminder if you need to. After soaking, plant the seeds immediately. Do not let them dry out between soaking and planting. The embryo is activated. The hormonal cascade has begun. The root is preparing to emerge. Letting the seed dry at this stage can stall or reverse the germination process. Soak, then plant. Same day. Now, let me be direct about which seeds benefit most from this protocol, because it is not a universal treatment, and pretending it is would waste your time. The seeds that respond most dramatically are old seeds with declining viability. Every seed loses germination potential over time. A packet of tomato seeds that is 3 or 4 years old may only have a 50 or 60% germination rate in plain water. The hydrogen peroxide component of this soak can recover a significant portion of that lost potential by breaking through the accumulated dormancy barriers that build up in aging seeds. If you have old seed packets sitting in a drawer and you are not sure whether they are still good, this soak is the best way to give them a fighting chance before you commit garden space to them. Hard-coated seeds benefit enormously. Beans, peas, morning glories, nasturtiums, parsley, cilantro, any seed with a thick outer shell that resists water uptake. The hydrogen peroxide softens the seed coat through gentle oxidation, allowing moisture to penetrate faster and more evenly. The germination speed improvement on hard-coated seeds is often the most visible result of the entire protocol. Seeds planted in cool soil benefit more than seeds planted in warm soil. In early spring, when soil temperatures are still below the ideal germination range, seeds can sit dormant for weeks, waiting for warmth. The hydrogen peroxide component jumpstarts the metabolic process even at suboptimal temperatures, and the aspirin component activates disease defenses at exactly the time when cool, damp soil is most favorable for damping off fungi. This soak is most valuable when conditions are least ideal, which is exactly when most gardeners are most eager to get seeds in the ground. Gardens with a history of damping off, seedlings collapsing at the soil line, trays of seedlings dying in patches, benefit specifically from the aspirin component. The salicylic acid primes the seedling's immune system against exactly the pathogens responsible for damping off. It does not replace good cultural practices, proper air circulation, avoiding overwatering, using clean containers and fresh potting mix. But it adds a layer of biological defense that unprimed seeds simply do not have. The seeds that need this treatment least are fresh, high-quality seeds planted in warm, well-prepared soil. A brand new packet of tomato seeds started indoors at 75 degrees in clean potting mix will germinate reliably without any treatment at all. The protocol helps, but the marginal improvement on fresh seeds in ideal conditions is smaller than the improvement on older seeds in challenging conditions. Use it if you have it prepared, but do not feel that your seeds will fail without it if everything else is working in your favor. Very small seeds, lettuce, carrots, celery, some flower seeds, are difficult to handle when wet and can be oversaturated by a 12-hour soak. For these, a shorter soak of 4 to 6 hours is sufficient, or you can mist them with the solution using a spray bottle rather than submerging them. Pelleted seeds, seeds coated with a clay shell for easier handling, should not be soaked at all. The coating is designed to dissolve slowly in soil moisture, and pre-soaking can cause it to break apart prematurely. One final preparation note: make only what you need for each planting session. The finished solution, willow water plus aspirin plus hydrogen peroxide, begins losing potency within hours, as the hydrogen peroxide degrades in the presence of organic compounds. It is not a product you mix once and store for the season. It is a fresh preparation made the evening before you plant. Leftover solution can be poured on the soil around established plants as a mild immune boost and biological stimulant. It will not harm anything. But for seed soaking, fresh is essential. That is the complete method. Willow water base prepared over 2 to 3 days. 1 aspirin tablet dissolved per gallon. 1 to 2 tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide stirred in. Seeds soaked 12 to 24 hours. Planted immediately. 3 ingredients. 1 overnight soak. And seeds that enter the soil with faster germination, stronger roots, and an immune system already prepared for what is waiting below the surface. But knowing the method is only half of the value. Knowing what to expect, the realistic timeline, the honest results, and the specific things to watch for in the first 2 weeks, is what keeps you from making the judgment errors that cause most people to either overcredit or dismiss the protocol before it has had a chance to work. Let me set expectations honestly, because overpromising is how useful methods get dismissed. You will not see 5 times more harvest from this soak. That claim floats around the internet, and it is not supported by any controlled research. What you will see, consistently, measurably, across a wide range of crops and conditions, is faster germination, stronger early root development, and better seedling survival rates compared to seeds planted dry or soaked in plain water. In practical terms, that means more of your seeds come up, they come up sooner, and fewer of them die in the first 2 weeks. How much faster? It depends on the seed, the soil temperature, and the baseline conditions. On old seeds with declining viability, the improvement can be dramatic. Germination rates jumping from 50% to 75 or 80%. On hard-coated seeds like beans and peas, you may see emergence 2 to 4 days earlier than untreated seeds planted at the same time. On fresh seeds in warm soil, the difference is subtler. Perhaps a day earlier, perhaps slightly more uniform emergence across the tray. The protocol does not create miracles. It creates advantages. And advantages compound. Here is what the first 2 weeks look like when the method is working. Days 1 through 3 after planting. You may not see anything above the soil surface yet, but below ground the treated seeds are already ahead. The hydrogen peroxide broke dormancy during the soak. The radicle, the first root, began emerging before the seed was planted. In the soil, that root is pushing downward into moisture, while untreated seeds beside it are still absorbing water and waiting for their internal chemistry to catch up. The head start is invisible but real. Days 4 through 7. Emergence begins. In a side-by-side comparison, treated seeds on one side of a tray, untreated on the other. The treated side typically shows green above the surface 1 to 3 days earlier. The seedlings that emerge are not dramatically different in appearance at this stage. They are simply ahead on the timeline. Days 7 through 14. This is where the aspirin component becomes visible. In a tray or a bed where damping off is present, and in most garden soils it is, untreated seedlings begin showing casualties. Stems collapse at the soil line. Seedlings that looked healthy yesterday are flat today. The treated seedlings in the same soil are more likely to survive this window, not immune. No treatment makes a plant immune, but measurably more resistant. The salicylic acid priming gave their defense systems a running start. The pathogens are still present in the soil, but the seedlings are better equipped to fight them off. By week 3, the root advantage from the willow water becomes apparent in above-ground growth. Treated seedlings tend to have thicker stems, deeper green color, and more vigorous leaf development than untreated seedlings at the same age. This is not because the willow water is still active. The IBA did its work during the soak and the first days of root formation. It is because a plant with a stronger root system from day 1 absorbs water and nutrients more efficiently every day after that. The advantage compounds. A seedling that roots faster grows faster because it feeds faster, and a seedling that feeds faster builds a bigger root system, which feeds it even faster. The cycle reinforces itself. By transplant time, 4 to 6 weeks after germination for most warm season crops, Treated seedlings are typically sturdier, more developed, and better prepared for the shock of moving into outdoor soil than untreated seedlings started on the same date. This does not mean untreated seedlings cannot catch up. In good conditions with good care, they often do. But the treated seedlings start the outdoor season with a buffer, a stronger root system, a more developed immune response, and a metabolic head start that carries forward into the production phase of the plant's life. Does this translate into more harvest? In most cases, yes, modestly. A plant that establishes faster, resists disease better, and roots more efficiently tends to produce more over a full season than a plant that started slower and spent its early weeks fighting problems the treated plant avoided. The improvement is not 5 times. It is not 3 times. In a well-managed garden with good soil and attentive care, the difference might be 10 to 20% more production from treated plants over a full season. In a challenging garden, cool soil, disease history, older seeds, short season, the difference can be larger because the protocol addresses exactly the problems that limit production in those conditions. 10 to 20% more food from the same garden space using 3 ingredients that cost less than $1 combined. That is the honest result. It is not a miracle. It is an edge. And edges matter when you are growing food you actually depend on. Now, a few final practical notes that will save you frustration. Do not combine this seed soak with commercial rooting hormone. The IBA in willow water and the IBA in commercial powder are the same molecule. Doubling up does not double the effect. It risks overdosing the seed with auxin, which can inhibit root development instead of promoting it. Choose one or the other. For home garden seed starting, willow water is the more practical choice because it also serves as the carrier liquid for the aspirin and hydrogen peroxide. Commercial rooting hormone is still excellent for stem cuttings where you want maximum concentrated IBA at the wound site. Do not store the finished triple solution. Make it fresh for each planting session. The hydrogen peroxide degrades within hours when mixed with organic compounds, and the aspirin breaks down gradually in the slightly acidic willow water. A solution mixed on Monday is significantly weaker by Wednesday. Fresh is effective, stored is unreliable. Leftover willow water without the aspirin and hydrogen peroxide stores much better. Keep it refrigerated for up to 2 weeks or freeze it for several months. You can make a large batch of willow water base in early spring and freeze it in 1-gallon portions, thawing each one as needed through the planting season. Add the aspirin and hydrogen peroxide fresh each time, just before soaking the seeds. If you do not have access to willow branches, you live in an urban area without willows nearby, or it is midsummer, and the young growth has hardened off, the aspirin and hydrogen peroxide soak alone still provides significant benefit. You lose the rooting hormone component, but you retain the dormancy breaking and immune priming effects. That 2-ingredient version is worth using even without the willow water. The willow adds an advantage. It is not the entire method. And one note specifically for gardeners in the United Kingdom and Northern Europe, where willow grows abundantly along waterways and in hedgerows. You have an embarrassment of riches. White willow, crack willow, weeping willow, goat willow, all of them produce IBA. Collect young branches in late winter or early spring before the leaves fully emerge and the auxin concentration is at its highest. In the UK climate, where cool, damp springs make damping off a persistent problem, and slow soil warming delays germination by weeks, this protocol is particularly well suited. The combination of dormancy breaking, root promotion, and disease defense addresses the 3 biggest challenges of a British spring in one overnight soak. Let me bring this full circle. Every spring, seeds go into the ground carrying nothing but their own genetic potential, and whatever the gardener provides. Most of the time, what the gardener provides is water and hope. That is not enough. Not when the soil is cold, the pathogens are waiting, and the seed's own dormancy lock is fighting against the clock. Willow water unlocks root potential that the seed cannot access on its own in the critical first days. Aspirin activates an immune system that would otherwise take weeks to develop. Hydrogen peroxide breaks the dormancy lock and fires up the metabolic engine that drives germination. 3 ingredients. 3 challenges solved. 1 overnight soak that costs less than a cup of coffee and uses nothing that nature and your medicine cabinet were not already providing. This spring, before your first seeds go into the ground, give them 1 night in this solution. Watch the emergence. Compare it to untreated seeds in the same tray. Let your own garden show you the difference. And then make it a habit, because a habit that costs nothing takes 10 minutes and produces measurably better results. Every single season is the kind of habit that belongs in every grower's routine. If this changed how you think about starting seeds, type grow in the comments and hit the like button. Every like and every comment pushes this video toward another gardener who is still losing seedlings to problems this protocol can prevent. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. Because this is the kind of practical, science-grounded, zero-cost growing knowledge this channel exists to share. Every subscriber tells us this work matters. And the more this community grows, the more videos like this we can keep making. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one. Your seeds are waiting. Give them the best start you can.